Hello and welcome back to Trista's Reading Room. Today we are looking at King of the Crown Imperials by Joanna Alonzo, and this was published on September 21st, 2023. Danger lurks everywhere. No one needs to know. She's a beautiful diversion. Time to put on a show. A royal internship in the island country of Ancoria is a perfect way for Vivian to end her year-long journey across the world. She gets more adventure than she bargained for when the internship requires her to pretend to be the prince's fiancé. With 2 spies missing and rumors of war spreading across the kingdom, the last thing Philip wants is to figure out his love life. A chance encounter with his cousin's best friend draws the nation's fascination and provides the perfect distraction to buy him time to protect his throne, family, and country. Will their farce of an engagement succeed in shielding the kingdom from its enemies, or will the lies reduce their faith, love, and country to ashes? This is a standalone, but it is part of an interconnected collection, Where the Lilies Wander. This is for ages 15 plus. There are themes of genocide as it is inspired by the story of Esther. You can find the book on Amazon in ebook and paperback forms. Here's a bit about the author. Joanna Alonzo is an author of Christian fiction novels with grit, grace, and wonder. She has a bachelor's degree in information technology from St. Louis University, but her creative leanings drew her away from software development to a career in faith and uncertainty. Her home base is LA, Trinidad Valley in the Philippines, but she wanders around too much to have a permanent residence. She is a fascinated apprentice to the greatest storyteller of all and loves to highlight his supernatural grace in her stories. She loves having coffee chats with people, but isn't a fan of them hugging her too much. Here's what she says the inspiration is. I wanted to create a fictional country in our world that have righteous leaders, royalty who are generally trying to follow God in our current world. The book is set in 1998, as it serves as a prequel to other stories set in the fictional country of Ancoria. I'd love it if the country becomes a character in and of itself. I'm even thinking of creating an Instagram or TikTok page dedicated to Ancoria and making people want to go. But I digress. This book draws from my love for the story of Esther, but it's not a retelling of Esther, as much as I want to honor the historical and biblical character. You'll see a lot of not-so-subtle hints and nods to the story of Esther, but Philip and Vivian's story is its own thing. It's a royal fake fiancé romance set in a modern fictional kingdom that might have mermaids, time travel, and realm hopping in the future. You can find her on Facebook, Instagram, and on her mailing list, where you can get free books. Prologue, 1983. Their unfathomable hatred eclipsed the promise of morning light. The whistle and swish of their blades somehow overpowered the agonizing screams of the village folk of Sagrada, a sound that would haunt Esther Cross for the rest of her life. From skin to marrow, her entire body trembled as she tucked her knees against her chest inside her Ina's 1 square meter cubby behind the scarlet curtain of their church's platform. She cupped her hands against her ears to spare herself from the ravaging of her hometown by bloodthirsty monsters. Even then, the terrorized cries of her neighbors cut right to her eardrums, pounding that morning's memories into her mind, her heart, her soul. "No! Please! Have mercy! Don't hurt my—" A swish, a yelp, and a final gasp for breath. Esther flinched. The only thing worse than the halting cries and pleas were the whimpers and sniffles of innocent women and the inexplicable laughter of corrupted men. A door creaked open and thudded shut, followed by the metallic clunk of a bolted lock. "Mordecai!" Her Ina's frantic voice lent Esther the tiniest bit of comfort. "What happened? Is he coming?" she gasped. "No. Oh God, only you can save us now." Her muffled voice indicated a hand over her mouth. "Mordecai, our daughter, if they find her." "Hush, Anya." Amma sounded weak. "This may be the end of us, but God is still in control. He will take care of Esther. She's with Peter. He knows what to do, where to go, whom to trust." Esther's guilt consumed her. Emma had told her to stay in bed, to do whatever Peter told her to do. But she had overheard that someone important from Encoria would arrive at their church to meet with Amma and Inna. Her adolescent musings about Luxorsum, its royal palace, and the prince who lived there had beckoned her to follow her Inna to their church. It had been a quiet dawn. Its beads of dew had come with the heady musk of the yellow and orange Crown Imperial lilies in Inna's garden. Instead of an important guest from the aristocratic circles of the capital, however, it had been Death that had come to visit them. Should she reveal herself to her parents, or stay hidden? Esther couldn't stand the idea of her Amma being disappointed by her disobedience. She longed for the comfort he was surely giving her Inna. So she crawled out of her cubby and whimpered a broken, "Amma?" Inna gasped out, "No, Mordecai! Esther!" Emma's wide-eyed terror upon catching sight of her emerging from the scarlet curtains told her what a horrible mistake she had made. The violent banging of angry fists against wooden doors filled their sanctuary. Inna hurried to her and placed 3 wet kisses on her cheeks, tears rushing down her Inna's lovely grief-stricken face as she pushed Esther back to the cubby. "We don't have time. You must hide. Don't move or make a single sound." "Inna?" Panic overtook Esther as she grasped her Inna's hold, unwilling to let go. "Inna, I'm scared." Metal against metal, the locks broke, and the resounding thud of the doors slammed open, preceding the voices of angry men. "God is with you. Fear not, Amor." Inna shoved her into the cubby, covered her with a white prayer shawl, and shut the doors of the small enclosure. Violence brought death all too quickly. Her parents hadn't even been given the time to scream or yelp. Or perhaps they had. But Esther could no longer hear past the sounds of her heart thumping against her chest, pounding against her brain, breaking against the slash of the blades that had released her Amma's and Inna's souls to heaven. She envisioned their heavy shoes as they thudded against the wooden platform of the church. The drip of the blood on their blades crawled against her trembling flesh. "They have a daughter," a deep, commanding, gravelly voice said. "Find her." "Fear not," Inna had said. But how could Esther not fear the terror hunting her down? She shut her eyes and bent her limbs to curl herself into a fetal position. The shawl that had covered so much of her Inna's prayers blanketed her. Outside her hiding place, fabric ripped and fell before the cubby's door slammed open. A snicker followed. Esther's terror kept her quiet as the tip of a blade poked at her. Blood trickled from her broken skin, tainting the shawl that was her only cover and protection. A short gasp came with the quick withdrawal of sharp metal from the pierced flesh on her waist. "You! Is she there?" the gruff voice of their leader demanded. The doors of the cubby thudded shut, making Esther flinch. "No, sir. No one here." A string of distasteful words flowed out of their leader's lips. "Off to their house, then. We mustn't let her get away. The legacy of Mordecai on your cross ends today." The most agonizing silence followed their departure. Tears freely flowed from Esther's eyes, but she dared not make a sound. She could have been in that box for minutes or hours. She couldn't tell. It was all the same to her. Amma and Inna were gone, and the last thing she had done was disobey them. Her tears flowed until she had no more tears left to shed. Only the hollowness left behind when all held dear had been ripped from one's arms. The cubby's door slammed open, and strong hands gripped her arm. Like she had been frozen solid inside her hiding place, she couldn't move as someone pulled her out. "Esther?" It was Peter's voice. He was untangling her limbs and awakening her muscles. As he tried to make her sit up, he whispered soothing words that fell on deaf ears as he cleared her face of her hair, dampened by her own tears. When she saw her cousin's worried face, Esther felt nothing. When he said they needed to flee, she complied. When he told her they needed to change their names, she nodded her head. She obeyed Peter because he knew best. It was Peter that had rescued her, so she owed him her life. Esther owed everything to Peter, her cousin, who spent the rest of his life doing everything in his power to keep her from the fate of a village fallen, brought to ruin by the hearts and hands of monsters who dared call themselves men. Part 1. Ruined. Daughter of the ruins from the blood of warriors, innocence lost. Triumph lights her ashen face, her freedom bought at a terrible cost. Chapter 1. Welcome to Encoria, 1993. Clouds brightened and dispersed at the intrusion of the sun's rays through their cotton-like wisps. The view brought to memory the flight of the dandelions scattered all over the hills near her childhood home. Her neighbors' dull chatter and unreserved laughter, as well as the heads that would turn at the village beauty passing by, drifted into her consciousness. Vivian Christiansen could almost hear the song of the sparrows and smell the muskiness of the Crown Imperial lilies in her Inna's garden. Each vagrant memory made her heart clench like a tight fist, indignant, rebellious, and infuriated by a past that could have ruined her if not for Pax, who had kept her on the path of the righteous, dragging her from the shadows of death and into glorious light. Why then was Pax the one in ashes, and she the one still breathing life? This salvagrant sojourner laid her palm flat on the airplane window, an attempt to connect with her destination, the land she had somehow relearned to love many years after the instinct for survival had forced her to leave it behind. A battle of anticipation and anxiety crescendoed within her. The cry of the past warred with the gnawing needs of the present, for healing, for reconciliation, for peace. The words of an old hymn echoed in her mind, but was it indeed well with her soul? Encoria had taken so much from her, yet here she was, opening her heart to it once again, ready to serve the kingdom that had once abandoned her family to the wicked hearts and hands of the violent. A tear swerved down her cheek, heat spreading on its trail. Vivian wiped it away. Awkward laughter escaped her lips, her chest aching for the presence of the one person who could have made this trip far less painful, only because he would have carried the bulk of her pain for her. His ashes lay inside the metal urn in her suitcase, cold and lifeless, a far cry from the person he had been, so full of vibrancy and optimism. Pax would have loved every minute of this. He would have told her to forgive and to be grateful for the rare opportunity she had been offered. So that's what she did, and that's what she would keep on doing. She forgave Encoria and mustered enough gratitude to brighten her disposition and cheer her soul. Vivian had no business being so downcast when she was about to experience the opportunity of a lifetime, a year among the aristocrats of the Kingdom of Isles. Her anticipation overcame her anxiety when the pilot announced the aircraft's descent. Soon, she would step on kingdom soil to fulfill Pax's final wish, that she bury his ashes in the land of his birth. In doing so, she prayed that God would be true to his word, that in exchange for these ashes, incinerated by the past, he would grant her something beautiful in return. Maybe then she could stop seeing Encoria as the kingdom that had broken her, but as the kingdom that would build her back up, much stronger than she had ever been before. The Luxor-some Atlantic jet taxied the tarmac. Something about the way it gently glazed the asphalt calmed the quickened beats of Vivian's stirring heart. Nestled in a plateau surrounded by forested mountains, Luxor-some International Airport was one of the most picturesque airports Vivian had ever seen, and she had been to quite a few in the past year. Atop one of the communication towers, as if to welcome all, a purple flag with a golden cross, flanked by 2 white stripes, waved against the breeze she craved to feel on her skin. Vivian retrieved her camera from her leather backpack and snapped several shots of the flag of Encoria through the plane's window. This one memory-preserving gadget had been one of her best sources of income throughout the past year. A thrill coursed through her at the unwavering conviction that her trusty camera was about to capture some of her best memories yet. She would make sure of it. With a grateful sigh, she leaned back on the wide beige leather seat afforded her by the complimentary first-class ticket her best friend had provided. The odds of her riding first class again were low, so she had cherished every moment of the luxurious 2-hour flight that could have fed her for an entire year. The plane halted, and the pilot's voice blared through the speakers, giving them permission to disembark. "Welcome to Encoria," he said, giving her a jolt of energy that often came with the promise of a new adventure. Vivian leaped from her seat and returned her camera inside her backpack. She secured the bag on her back, its leather straps clinging to her shoulders. She retrieved her well-worn carry-on luggage from its compartment and walked out of the cubicle to the passageway, where a flight attendant was already ushering first-class passengers out of the plane. As if objecting to her return to the kingdom she once considered her home, the 4 wheels of her hard-case spinner luggage swiveled in opposite directions. Its refusal to cooperate prompted a line of people in crisp business attire behind her. "Do you need help, amor?" The man next to her flashed her a killer smile. He was the embodiment of dashing and debonair, but as respectable as he appeared to be, Vivian still hesitated to accept the assistance offered. Would he ask for her contact details if she said yes? "I think I can Her carry-on's wheels proved to be more rebellious than a rusty grocery cart. She could almost hear Pax snickering in her ear. If she continued this way, his ashes would be all over her stuff. The notion sickened her, so she relented. "Yes, please," she said. "I don't think I can carry it all the way to the arrival area." With ease, he picked up her 33-pound bag, his brows lifting at the motion. Was it too heavy? Vivian blushed. She stepped aside to give him way. Only then did she notice the multiple pairs of male eyes fixed on her. They must think her a bumbling fool. Great first impression she was making on all these wealthy Ancorinos. "I'm so sorry," she mouthed. "Don't worry about it." His smile would have made a teenage version of her melt inside. "I think I speak for everyone when I say we don't mind waiting, if it means we can be around someone as lovely as you." "Oh," she lowered her gaze. "Thank you." Pax would have rolled his eyes at this man. Vivian couldn't do the same, not when the stranger was being so needlessly kind. So she walked alongside him instead. "I'm Landon Kent," he said as they exited the plane and walked through the tube leading to the airport. The name rang familiar. Vivian Christiansen. She reached for her bag once they reached the end of the tube. "Thank you so much. I can handle it from here."
"At least let me help you into the baggage area."
His strides were long and he showed no signs of stopping as he nodded for her to keep up. "You don't have to." Vivian suppressed a groan. She might as well go along with it. She sped up her steps to stay in pace with him. Her bag's handle stayed firm in Mr. Kent's grip. Pax's remains were inside. He would have stepped in at this point. He would have pulled her as far away from Landon Kent as possible. Pax had never trusted men around her. He had been so overprotective. She used to hate that about him, but he had raised her with strict rules when it came to the opposite sex. Though she had resented him then, she had never dared break his rules. Even in her adolescence, she had loved and respected him too much to ever do anything against his will.
"You'll understand me someday, Viv,"
he had once told her.
"Beauty like yours isn't safe around the wrong kind of men, and there will be many who will try to lay claim to you. I pray you'll be able to discern who is and isn't the right kind. I pray you'll find someone who will love you more than you love him. More than that, someone who loves God more than anything." "Is it your first time in Ancoria?"
Landon interrupted Pax's sage advice running through her head. Despite her hesitation to make small talk with a stranger, the reminder of her location cheered her heart. "Yes, it is." Her voice came out breathless, her gut turning at the unnecessary lie. "I'm so blessed to be here."
"How long are you staying for?"
1 year, she said.
"That long? For work or for leisure?"
"Work, but also leisure." She laughed. "Both."
"Wonderful. If you ever need a break, feel free to give me a call."
He took out a business card from the inner pocket of his suit jacket and handed it to her.
"I would love to show you around my country."
Landon Kent, CEO of Luxa Motors. No wonder the name was familiar. This man was the son of the founder of Ancoria's leading automobile manufacturing company. She was standing before a Luxorsome lord, Duke of the 5th sphere of Ancoria. Vivian blushed before quickly bowing her head to acknowledge his nobility. "I hadn't realized, Duke Kent." He stepped on the airport auto walk and leaned on its moving handrails, her suitcase set next to him. His brow rose at her.
"You're familiar with Ancorian politics?"
"I studied a lot of the kingdom's culture and history while in university." Vivian stepped on the auto walk with him. "I didn't major in it, because I went for a degree in finance and economics. but I took every elective I could that had something to do with Ancoria.
Impressive. Beauty and brains.
The flicker of interest in his eyes wasn't lost on Vivian. She had encountered it far too many times not to recognize it, though flattered by the attention, especially coming from one of the nation's lords. Her heart didn't have much space to let anyone in, not when it was still filled to its bruised edges with grief. It helped that my roommate was Ancorian. She definitely expanded my knowledge of Ancoria and its customs. She will be hosting me while I'm here.
Anyone I might know?
The Duke picked her luggage up again and stepped off the auto walk at the same time she did. Vivian adjusted the straps of her backpack before biting her lip. Was she allowed to disclose that to anyone? What trouble could it cause? Anastasia Sedaris. Landon's eyes widened.
Stassi? Terrific then. I'll get in touch with her to invite you lovely women over for a weekend in Orval. I hope you pay my lands a visit, Miss Christensen. You'll discover soon enough that Orval is one of Ancoria's most thriving, most memorable cities.
Again, the excitement rushed over her despite her hesitation. I must admit, Sir Kent.
Please, call me Landon.
Right. Vivian nodded. Landon. She gulped. As I was saying, I've always wanted to visit Ancoria's City of Stars. But yes, it would have to be with Stassi's consent, as I'll be working under her. This was perfect. She could just use Stassi as some sort of buffer against anyone who might try to ask her out.
Does that mean you're headed for the palace then?
The palace?
Yes, where Stassi works. I'm headed there right now, if you'd like a ride.
Stassi is picking me up. Vivian squinted an eye. I'm not actually sure what her plans are or where we're heading.
That's unfortunate for me, as I would love to get to know you more. But if you're working directly with Stassi, then I'm hoping I'll see you at the Vasselane. I'm glad I met you now, because I'm certain I'll have my fair share of competition when it comes to getting your attention, Miss Christensen.
You're being too kind, sir. I'm nobody here. I doubt anyone will notice my presence wherever I am.
That's why you're wrong, Miss Christensen.
Landon stopped at the VIP area of the baggage conveyor belt, where the luggage of all first-class passengers would come out first.
I know the men in court, and if someone who looks like you starts showing up at court functions and events, by the time you leave this country, Vivian, mark my words, everyone will know who you are.
Vivian blushed, but dread choked her with his words. She shuddered at the notion of being in Ancoria's spotlight, so much so that she made a mental note to tell Stassi she preferred tasks that would keep her incognito and behind the scenes. There was no point for her to attract unwanted attention, not when she was on such a personal journey, one that, in her mind, she was sharing with Pax. Over the past year, she had lived off of her camera as she journeyed through Asia and Europe, visiting 24 countries in total. Ancoria was the 25th. It was the one country she and Pax had promised themselves they would someday visit together. With her finally making good on that promise, something deep within her longed to treat the next year as sacred. It was something she was doing not only for herself, but in honor of Pax's memory. Vivian didn't need everyone to know who she was, not when she barely knew herself. After all, the whole point of this journey was not for her to be discovered by others, but for her to rediscover herself, the self she had lost one fateful morning when blood and tears had soaked their village grounds red. The cries and pleas of the defenseless had filled the air, and the glint of sharp weapons slicing through flesh and bone had devastated the memories of the innocent. The blood blades had once stripped everything away from Pax and Vivian. Ancoria, in all its power, had done nothing to help. As much as Pax had taught her how to love this kingdom, Vivian had to find a way to forgive, hoping that forgiveness would help her find a way to forget. If she could only forget, perhaps she could finally heed her Inna's final words.
Fear not, Amor.
And that's it for today. If you want to read more of this book, make sure to check it out on Amazon and follow the author. Thanks for joining me.